السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة
وعليكم
الله وبركاته.
وعليكم
ما شاء
السلام
الله.
ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Alhamdulillah. Welcome to everyone, and special welcome to Dr. Sohail Choksy, who is our special guest today. And Alhamdulillah, he's made time from his busy life to spend some time with us. And inshallah, Imad will start with interrogating him about Islam. Inshallah.
He should be interrogating me. It's people like Dr. Sohail who take our exams. So
Oh,
the roles are reversed today. SubhanAllah. Alhamdulillah, really nice to meet you. And Alhamdulillah, I've heard so much about you, which and it's really a pleasure to meet you for the first time. And inshallah, we'll for the benefit of our audience as well, we'll find out a few more things. So, Dr. Sohail, what is it that you do in your current role?
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh to you and both Imam Habib and Brother Ahmad. It's a privilege and honor to be your guest today, and I'm in very good company. So what do I do? Who am I? My name is Sohail Choksy. I'm a consultant vascular surgeon, and I work in the East Suffolk and Northeast Essex Foundation Trust, which consists of two hospitals. It's an NHS trust, and that's the Colchester Hospital, where I was appointed at the Ipswich Hospital, which is 20 miles, as you know, further north. And my role is essentially, my speciality, if you like, is vascular surgery, which I'm sure that you're familiar with. It's a speciality in which we deal with blood vessels outside the heart. So all the blood vessels in the body, the arteries, which carry blood to the organs and to all the structures, and the veins, which take blood away from the from the body back into the heart. So anything to do with veins and arteries is what we specialize in. And this is this conditions affects all the age groups, and from the very young to the very old, but mainly we deal with adults and some elderly people as well. So that's in a nutshell what I do. It's my speciality, but in addition to that, I do some other things as well, which we'll touch on a bit later, inshallah.
Are you involved in teaching medical students as well and OSCEs?
Yeah, so teaching medical students is one of the things that we do quite a lot of. Essentially, you're the doctors of our future, so we have to teach you, because you're the one who's going to be operating on my knee, or you're the one who's going to be treating my asthma, or when I get old, and my children and my grandchildren. So we need to make sure that our future is looked after. So medical student teachers is something you do really from day one. We have a phrase, as you say in medicine, see one, do one, teach one. And I think that it's a very important part of what we do. And from day one, we're teaching junior medical students, when we're senior medical students, how to examine different parts of the body. I remember when I was in medical school, we used to sort of go around going like this, listening to our sort of chest percussion. And so it's something we do quite a lot of. And we do it in different ways. As you know, OSCEs is one way of doing it, which is a special way of doing it, in which you have stations in which you teach medical students a particular skill or test them on a particular skill. And then there's ward-based teaching, where we ask a medical student to review a patient and take what we call a history, which is when they find out what's wrong with the patient, and then they examine the patient, and then they present that to us, and then we critique them and we ask them questions, and it's based on the on the actual case that we're talking about. So there's different ways. So yeah, I've been involved in teaching in both the actual coalface teaching and also in the organization, the delivery of teaching. So being undergraduate tutor and things like that is something very important for surgery. Organizing the sort of teaching the the pattern of teaching, taking part in syllabus, what we teach medical students, how we teach medical students, it's all an evolving thing. And it's not just about being a doctor and about knowing what to teach. It's really how to teach is the other important thing. And that's where you need to think about being an educator, which is quite different to being a doctor. Being an educator is something that doesn't come naturally to everybody, and it's something that you have to acquire, and which you have to learn.
It's quite interesting there. You said how, sort of in a nutshell, that every doctor needs to have some sort of teaching capacity within their role, because otherwise, how is the profession going to carry on? So, do you believe like every doctor should be a good teacher? And what tips do you have for those doctors and medical students who are watching, who perhaps find teaching a bit difficult?
I think that, of course, people, every person has their own talent. Everybody has their strengths and weaknesses, and we can't say that everybody's going to be a brilliant teacher. But I think it's a kind of a duty, really, to pass on, knowledge, and to pass on experience. I think that's a duty incumbent upon everybody. So, I think that without that, it's an integral part of being a doctor, really, because I think without that, the profession will never, you'll never be able to, because you can do so much in reading books. Okay, you can read a lot in books, but being able to teach a skill is something completely different. The skill of examining a patient, examining a patient's heart, eliciting the signs and symptoms from the patient. It's like being a detective, and you can't really do it by reading a book. You do it by, you do it really the best way. I think that the way I learned, the best teachers that I had were the teachers who used to come and sort of listen to the way you've presented a patient, and then watch you examine a patient carefully, and critique you afterwards and said, did you do this, did you hear this, did you do that? And I thought the teaching that I got, I was so lucky, because we had some really, really good teachers where I trained. I trained in St Bartholomew's Hospital in London, which is incidentally where I was born as well, believe it or not. But so I was trained, and we had such wonderful teachers who used to say, right, we used to have about 5 or 6 people round a patient's bed, and the teacher used to say, right, so how would you like to ask this patient a history? So we used to, I used to say this and that, and then they used to say to the next person, right, Fred, would you like to examine this patient's lungs? So we all used to watch, and they used to examine the patient's lung and get the stethoscope out, and then used to be like everybody used to be watching you, and everybody was contributing towards that particular sort of education of that individual. And then afterwards, the teacher would say, the teacher, or you could call it our trainer, whatever description. He used to kind of critique you, and he used to say that, oh, you should have done this, you should have done that. And he used to, sometimes he used to actually show how he would examine a patient. So in that way, you used to learn a lot of skills, and the things that you learnt on paper, you were able to actually practice, which is a wonderful way of doing it.
Yeah.
Mashallah, I think this is actually like applicable beyond medicine as well. But I think what I really took away from that was, like, I think passion is quite important. Like, so the way you speak about it is, it's so important to preserve knowledge, and that's not the mindset which all teachers have. Some teachers are teaching for other reasons, like because it's their job. But I think that by thinking like that, that's what ignites the passion. That's what makes it something which is so exciting. And I think that can be taken as well into even teaching the Quran, and teaching kids about Islam, about their religion. But I wanted to, sorry, drag the conversation a bit more into back to the arteries. So what would usually be wrong with the arteries? What would have to be wrong with the arteries or the veins for you to need to be involved with them?
Very good question. Okay, so what can go wrong with the artery? So, an artery is a blood vessel, and it takes blood from the heart into the organs and the tissues. Now, if you think about it like this, that a blood vessel can narrow or it can block, and by doing that, by blocking or becoming narrowed, it means that the organ which it's supplying gets starved of blood. Okay, so and the commonest cause of this narrowing is called atherosclerosis, and it's to do with, if you like, furring up of the arteries. When you get fat deposits in the arteries, and gradually the artery narrows, and eventually the narrowing becomes a blockage. So how would that manifest itself? Well, if you think about the heart, for example, say that you had a narrowing or blockage in the heart, then what would happen is that you may have symptoms, and the symptoms might be that you when you do some exercise, you can get some pain in your chest. It's called angina. In the same way, for example, if you have a narrowing to the blood vessels in your legs, which is something that we deal with a lot, then that can cause pain in the leg when you walk. Now, this particular problem can progress from just a narrowing or a short blockage to a long blockage, and that can actually cause more severe symptoms. So, for example, in the heart, when you have a blockage that's quite a serious one, then it can cause a heart attack. In the same way, if you have a very severe blockage in the blood vessels in your leg, then you can get problems with pain, in your feet or in your legs, and perhaps even ulcers and gangrene in your tissues as well. So that's one thing that can happen to blood vessels. What else can happen to blood vessels? Well, they can swell, okay? And they can go the other way, so they can become bigger. And if they become bigger, that's called an aneurysm. Yeah, an aneurysm is.
Can I just interrupt you there? I've heard that the AAA, the abdominal aortic aneurysm, to operate on a ruptured AAA is the hardest operation in any specialty. What's your
Yeah.
comment on that?
Well, the thing is, I just did one on, what was it, Monday, or what day was it? I did a ruptured aneurysm. Was it Tuesday, Wednesday? I think it was a Thursday, actually. I did ruptured aneurysm, and the operation that you're referring to is when the swelling in the aorta becomes so big, like a balloon, that it bursts. So this gentleman, who was 61 years of age, he came into hospital, and he had some pain in his right groin. So, and they did a scan in casualty, and they found that the swelling in the aorta is called an aortic aneurysm, as I said, as you've quite rightly said. And so when they told me about this patient, I said, right, we need to get a CT scan, because we need to get more information as to whether this aneurysm has actually ruptured, whether it's actually burst. So they did a CT scan, and of course, I knew, but from my experience, that it probably had ruptured. So we, took the patient to the operating theatre, and what we do in this situation is, what's happening essentially is that the blood is escaping from this blood vessel into the abdomen, into your tummy. And so it's like a tap, it's an open tap. So, obviously the blood pressure of the patient drops. And the most important thing is to stop the bleeding. So there's different ways of doing it. You can put a stent inside it, but the way that I decided to do on this patient is to make a big incision in the abdomen, and then, clamp the aorta, or stop the bleeding by applying a clamp above the aneurysm and below the aneurysm, and then fixing the aneurysm. And it is one of those operations that, it's quite a stressful operation, because if you can't manage to stop the bleeding, then the patient is bleeding in front of you and can bleed to death. So it's one of those operations that you need to do fairly quickly, and you need to have a really good team, with you.
For example, like, obviously this is an emergency, so we have a type of surgery, just for the benefit of our audience. We have elective surgeries, like in orthopedics, when you need to replace a knee or something like that, which people are on a waiting list for. They have the operation. Then you have things like a AAA, which can happen at any time, a ruptured AAA, which can happen at any time of the day and or the night. How long, like from your experience, does like a repairing of AAA take?
It can,
triple A
yeah,
aneurysm?
good question. So this particular, it can take a variable amount of time. This particular operation, I think we started at around 1 p.m. and we'd finished by about 5 p.m. So about 4 or 5 hours, but often it can take longer than that.
And what about
Um,
the planning? So you said you decided when you got in there to kind of clamp on either side of the aneurysm. So the planning process, is that in the operating room or is it prior to going into the operating room?
it's prior to, really. You want to, you make your decisions and your plan ahead of time. You look at the scans, you look at the patient, you talk to the patient. I mean, this is a very scary thing for a patient. Someone who's come in 1 minute, they're perfectly healthy, they don't know they've got the aneurysm, and then bang, they're in the operating theatre and you're telling them that they might die. So it's quite a, emotionally, it's very difficult for the patient. So yeah, you have a limited amount of time, but in that limited amount of time, you've got a plan in your head as to what you're going to do, and you execute it as quickly as you can. And I think, it's Allah's help. Allah is the one who gives you the strength and gives you the wisdom and the skills and the knowledge to be able to and put it in. It's Allah who's saving the patient. You're just, the way I look at it is, I'm just a vehicle. And before I start any operation, I always say Bismillah Rahman Rahim. I always do. It's an absolute habit. And it may seem that it's all about heroism, but it isn't really. It's about humbleness, actually. It's about sort of, it's really that you're just doing what Allah has willed you to do, and you're just your pair of hands doing it. Really, it's, and you can do a brilliant job. The patient might die because it's in Allah's hands. That's how Muslims believe, and I think that's how we believe. And every operation I do, I have fear. I'm not complacent that that I'm going to fix this person and the person's going to live and I'll be a heroism. It's not like that, really. It's actually, I'm scared. I hope, inshallah, Allah will give me the strength and the skills and the wisdom to be able to save, for him to be able to save the life through my hands. I mean, that's really what it's all about. And actually, to be honest with you, it's actually a real privilege to be able to be in that position. I think that, you you can never be closer to being in that position than to be probably a vascular surgeon or cardiothoracic surgeon. Then, because you're really at the very point at which, critical steps can decide whether someone
Definitely.
will die or not. And again,
Yeah.
not the decisions we make. It's the wisdom that Allah has given us. And it's like that. And sometimes the outcome can be really, it can be really, you do everything and the patient doesn't make it. And part of you feels, even though you've done your best, you still feel perhaps you could have done better.
So just leading on from that, I've got a couple of questions. So, sometimes, like you said, it's a life or death situation. And, people have this idea of surgeons having this personality where, they have this God complex where it's almost as if, you've got this in your hands, a life or death. And I suppose, Alhamdulillah, from what you're saying, it seems like your religion actually plays a huge part in giving you that humbleness and humility to kind of allow you to turn back and say, no, it's actually in Allah's hands. So based on that and how deeply kind of religion impacts you and, your spirituality as well, going to surgery and stuff, what happens? So, for example, this, we keep on talking about it, but this rupture AAA, if it can take, hours on end, and obviously for medical students and junior doctors who are perhaps not part as an essential part of the team in the sense that they're leading the operation, such as a consultant surgeon would, if they go out of the surgery, it's okay, they can go and perhaps it's prayer time. So what do you do if you're the consultant surgeon and it's prayer time and you've got a short window to pray? How does that work? Can you pray in the operating theater? Do you have to descrub? Can you go out, or do you like wait until you make up because it's an emergency? So what's your own process behind that? Because that's a serious question I have, and I just thought about it when we were talking about the road trip AAA, because it's an emergency operation, can happen any time of the day or night, and is you're like Allah's using you as life or death for this sort of thing.
It's a very good question. I think that I mean, you know, you have to observe your religion. You have to observe Islam, and you can observe Islam. The first observation of Islam is obviously iman, and that's something that you have, and your iman is helping you in all aspects of your life. Obviously, not just in Disruption AAA, but in all aspects. So I think in terms of other things, I always fast, for example, in Ramadan, and I always observe my fast, because I believe that actually it enhances my performance. It's something that gives me even more reason to be able to do well. It gives you an even clearer mind. In terms of salah, what I tend to do is I tend to have the view that I will do whatever I can for the patient in front of me, because I believe that that's what Allah would want me to do. The sanctity of life and the sanctity of preserving life that is given by Him and taken by Him is the ultimate. And I think that if you're in a situation where you need to be able, it's affecting clinical care, I would always finish that aspect before excusing myself to read salah. Of course, there are times in which you've finished the critical parts of the operation and you can hand over part of the operation to one of your junior colleagues, or or you finish the operation. I always am of the view that I will catch up my salah during that time, rather than do it when there's any chance that the patient could be affected. And I think that it's very important to be able to do that. I think that Allah has given us ways, and given us, he's forgiving, he's compassionate, and He understands things that are in our heart, and He understands our actions and our intentions. And I think that's my view. I'll always try to finish the operation and put the patient in a safe place before I think about anything else. And it would be different ways of doing it.
So
I think
okay, just
also
going
like
back to your
the
okay, go.
complexity of that kind of operation as well. I think you would kind of need that focus, like undistracted focus as well. Like I don't think you really should be checking the time, if that makes sense. So I think that would be an excusable thing if you're in that kind of a thing. I think that's a really nice answer, actually. We're just about to move on to the second half.
Let me just ask a
But
couple of more questions regarding Dr. Sohail's career, because I know we spoke a lot about it, but just a couple of things I wanted to ask you personally as well. So you've mentioned about your training in Barts. Did you always know you wanted to be a vascular surgeon? If not, when did you realize that?
So I think that I didn't think that I would be a vascular surgeon until when I did my first surgical firm. I did and the very first case I had, we had, I had a knock on the door at 3 o'clock in the morning, and we used to be on call with the team in those days, and I got a knock on the door, and it was at Barts, and we had to walk to the hospital from Charterhouse Square, which is about a 10-minute walk, and we got into the operating theatre, and I just felt it. It just felt so special to be part of that. And I was actually helping with the operation. And by the end of it, I had decided that this is the operation. And that one operation, I think, decided that I wanted to be a vascular surgeon. And
I think the first operation I assisted in was actually an amputation in vascular surgery, where it was a vascular surgery team in Brighton here. They're so nice. Most of them seem to be Egyptian for some reason. The consultants down to the registrars, down to the junior doctors, they can do the word run in Arabic sometimes because they're all speak Arabic. So in terms of career progression, is there for consultant posts, and I know some places in some specialties is there bottlenecking, and can you explain what that is for some of our audience?
So what happens is that obviously when you do the training, there's bottlenecks at different levels. So the first bottleneck is obviously getting into medical school. Then following the medical school, you then you know, or everybody gets a house officer job, but then getting onto a training scheme itself, for core surgical training, there's competition to do that. And then going on to higher surgical training, there's a bottleneck there. But if you've completed higher surgical training in the normal fashion, and you've got into that, it's very likely that you'll get a job, as a consultant in the UK, provided you are, you're a normal person, and you're not sort of, you've got good people skills, and you've got, you've got all the abilities that has, you've got as a trainee. So I think that, let's put it this way: if you want to do something, nothing can stop you. If you pray to Allah and you have enough determination, nothing can stop you. And I think that as long as you've got that faith, you can go to space. It doesn't matter. Being a vascular surgeon is nothing if you put your mind and heart to it.
I really like that answer. I really like that answer. Final question. In terms of
MashaAllah, Jazakallah khair. We're going to move on to the second part of today's session, because obviously we have limited time. So in the first part, we're going to look at kind of the medical aspect of Dr. Sohail and his career, what he's done. And Jazakallah for sharing all of that. That was just amazing, man. Alhamdulillah. I think it brings a real insight into what a lot of our kind of Muslim ummah is getting up to in their daily lives, and how much depth there is to it. And I think what really intrigues me is how, despite all of that, I know, alhamdulillah, that you played a major part in the formation of the Colchester Islamic Community Center, which is a beautiful organization. So I really wanted to know, like, how did that come about at the beginning, and like what was the process behind that?
Okay, thank you very much. I think that the Colchester Islamic Community Center is a very, very special project, and I think that the most special bit of it is really the people, and it's the people of Colchester, and the people who give so much of their time and their sincere effort to be able to make this this mission successful. Now, I think that what it's all about, what we are really talking about, is the sense of community, the sense of different people of different backgrounds united by Islam. And I think this is this goes back to the very, very earliest time of Islamic period, when Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he this is what he created. He created a community, that had a purpose, that had, we had a faith that was so beautiful. But around that faith, you need a community. You can't be sort of solitarily, sort of, be engaging this. You need to have a community. And I think what it all was all about is trying to bring together different parts of the community, trying to unite those people, and then trying to create an atmosphere where the younger generation, the older generation, the ladies, the women, the sisters, and all of community can play a part, and be able to engage and be able to unite what unites us, which is Islam. And I think so. What we did is I have to say that it was, there's, I'm sure you've met Shahab Khan, who is one of our colleagues who was one of the very first people who had that sort of vision that we need something like this in Colchester. We need a place as well. We need a premises where we can meet, where we can pray, where we can learn, where we can teach, where we can meet and socialize, and be able to help each other in this way. So I think that's what CICC really was all about, and what it is all about, really.
So what does it stand for, CICC?
So it's the Colchester Islamic Community Centre.
Okay.
So, behind the concept is the fact that we were, one of the things that we were striving for is to is to purchase a property, a place where we can call our own, and we can develop something is not just a mosque, but something that is more than a mosque, something that is a community facility where people can, as I said, enjoy all those things that I've mentioned.
And I think beyond that, I think what I found, that a lot of people needed, a lot of the sisters needed, was something which actually felt like a place they were welcome. Because very often, I think too often, in a lot of the mosques, the facilities for sisters are either non-existent or they're kind of demeaning almost. Like they're kind of like they're not really. It's not really for them. They're just kind of there if they happen to be passing, rather than actually creating a space for them to feel welcome and to use and to kind of organize and to feel in charge. And I think obviously with the CICC having them as trustees, I think I saw that as a really beautiful thing, which really helps actually because like they're at least half of the population, and there's so much very often closer to the kids, and it's so important for them to be involved in the decision making by being a trustee, and also in the activities and what's going on. So I think that's really kind of powerful there.
I think that's the direction that faith space should move into the future as well, because a lot of like people who are like second generation children of migrants, they're becoming the young professionals of today, and they're asking those questions perhaps that weren't asked but when by their parents who came over or were from abroad, and now these children
Mm.
who are born in this country, and they're having this identity crisis where they don't know how to relate to culture. They're trying to sort of find the right, strike a right balance between culture and religion. And they're finding that perhaps the religion is not as inviting because, unfortunately, the majority of the mosques, do, like Habib said, it's just kind of like a tick box. We have a women's space, even though it's like an old converted, I don't know, shed or something like that. So I think it's really important to have that and place it. A recent place I saw was Cambridge, the new mosque in Cambridge, which
Mm.
is the Eco Mosque, and the way, Subhanallah, everything is. It just not reminds me because of course I wasn't there, but the descriptions of the prophetic Mosque sallallahu alaihi wasallam, like
Sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
back in the prophet's day, if he had sort of come into the modern era, I imagine that this would have been something like it. And so, what is the current progress with the premises that have you acquired the premises?
Yeah. So, yeah, absolutely. And I think the what you've stressed about women and about sisters is really important. I mean, 50% of the population, and 50% of our talent, 50% of our
Mhm.
of our intelligence, at least, probably more actually, if I was to be honest. And I think that this is something that we were very sort of was, if you look at our membership, if you look at our look at our activities, many of them are run by sisters. They're the ones who are really providing the engine for a lot of the things we do. And I think we've got it in our constitution that it's in our constitution to have female trustees. And I hope, inshallah, in the future that we will always cater for the needs of our sisters. I have to be slightly selfish because I've got three girls. I've got all daughters, so I'm a little bit sort of I've got my own interest. That I hope that in the future that we will always cater for our lady folk. There, it's not just lip service. It has to be real.
Yeah, now I think what CICC, the way I see it, is like, Alhamdulillah, we're already beyond that. I mean, we can see them leading it. Like the way it is, it's not difficult to see them, as the leaders, as the people who are behind it all. So very soon they'll be kind of, building the buildings for us to go to. and really taking it forward, I think.
Yeah, inshallah. And
So what?
in terms of the progress, sorry, brother Imad, you asked about the progress, and
Yeah,
I slightly, because
that's all right.
I think it's so important to stress what you've said about ladies and about sisters. I think the other so the center. So what we did is we found a place. I mean, essentially the journey was quite a up and down one, but I think what happened is that we were only formed in 2016, and in fact, really 2017, really. And as a charity, that's when we became a charity. We became a registered charity in 2017, and mashallah, by the grace of Allah and the absolute generosity and the the commitment of the our population in Colchester and beyond, and our trustees and our and our community, and our membership was so behind us that mashallah, by 2019, we'd actually bought a premises. We'd raised over £500,000 to buy a premises. And mashallah, by the grace of Allah, what did we buy? We bought a pub, mashallah. So we actually bought a pub. Now, you can't find a more sort of opposite thing, that's going to become a mosque. I mean, it's a miracle, really, that you're turning a pub, into a place of piety. I mean, it just shows you that how Allah can work. And so we bought this pub. It's a Beehive pub in Colchester. It's on the outskirts of Colchester, on Bromley Road. And I think we bought it in an area that's predominantly white as well, non-Muslim area. So we're not talking about buying something in Highwoods or in the centre of town. We bought it in a predominantly sort of white area. And of course, there were people who don't understand our religion, and people who who are only going by what they see on television, and and even with that type of thing, I mean, there were a lot of understanding people there as well, but there was obviously some opposition. But funny enough, I think that if you turn it around the other way, there are actually a lot of people who are quite welcoming. And the plan, my main thing is we bought the place, with a view to be able to, because when you buy a premises like that, you've got to actually change the use of that premises. You have to go through a planning process, and that is probably the most hardest thing that you can do. And if you think about what you're trying to do, you're converting, a pub that people, have enjoyed socializing over the years, that has been there for many years, and you're turning it into a mosque and community center. So alhamdulillah, by the grace of Allah, and again, this is a miracle. This is a miracle that we actually bought the place in September, and by December of 2019, we'd been granted planning permission. MashaAllah. I mean, it's a miracle, first time. And, the council unanimously voted in our favor because we were doing the right thing and we presented it in the right way. And so we got the planning permission. And then after that, we at the moment, things have slowed down a bit. What we decided is, rather than just refurbish it and reopen it, we want to make something special. And so we've employed a Muslim architect who's currently doing the design, because when we went through the process of building regulations and making it fit, we thought we're going to spend so much money to create something that's not special. So instead we said we'd raise everything to the ground and let's start from scratch and see what we need to do to make it really nice. So this is the process that we're following, and we're very lucky because our community is patient with us. They realize that we want to do something good rather than do some intermediate step. We want to do something that will be good for the next decade, inshallah.
So what is it that's like the sorry?
You focus on the stars, inshallah.
Yeah.
What's the timeline like? So with COVID, of course, was it disrupted, or what's a timeline for like what we're planning to do here?
So I think that's a good question. I think that at the moment we're in a process of trying to establish how and a project like this takes time. Yeah. A project like this takes, money, and it takes effort. And I think, although because of COVID, we've slowed down significantly. Um, once we get, I don't want to commit to a timeline, but I'm hoping that within the next, year or couple of years, inshallah, we'll have something that the community will enjoy using. And it may be that we may have to do it in phases. We have a phase one, a phase two, but what we don't want to do is make a phase one and then break it down and make a phase two, and break it down and make a phase three. What we want to do is have a phase one and then add a phase two, and it has to be designed in a way that we can do that. So this is one of the fundamental concepts of what we're doing: is we don't want to waste people's money. We want to use it wisely and take our time, because all the money is there. Because alhamdulillah, we got as well as raising the money to buy the property, we also raised enough money to do, to start the work as well. So we're trying to use it wisely, rather than rush into it and spend it unwisely.
SubhanAllah, it seems like you're doing everything with wisdom. And just, when you talked about the pub, I was just thinking, you said, it was a place where sin used to take place. I remembered one of our teachers, I can't remember which teacher exactly, but he said regarding the mute expressions that land has. So, how every object, we might not hear it speak, but Allah's created some essence within everything. So it's as if the earth, that part of the earth, one day was crying and complaining to Allah, and Allah changed its fate by allowing His worship on it, and it will happen until the day of judgment, inshallah.
MashaAllah. I mean, I think we're very, very happy with that. It's a special thing. I think but I think with this, there's an enormous responsibility, and the responsibility of trust, the responsibility of delivering, of making a promise, of Allah being pleased with us or displeased with us. These are enormous things. So yes, it all sounds really, sort of visionary, and it all sounds, that it's idealistic. But with it, there's a responsibility, and as trustees, I'm always worried about it. I'm always worried that, what if we can't deliver the thing that we've promised to the people? What if, Allah will be displeased with us, and something will go wrong? So there's a constant sense of responsibility that everybody, all of us trustees, carry in our hearts, and we realize we're only trustees. We're not, we're not actually, this is not our money. It's not. It belongs to the ummah, and it belongs to the people of our community and our Colchester community and beyond. So every penny that is spent, and every commitment that is made, we have to be very, very careful.
Yeah, I think that transparency really kind of helps build the trust as well when it's that clear as well. I think I like the openness of CICC from what I've seen. I don't see too much which you get in a lot of mosques, like a lot of things happening and you're not really sure why. And the diversity, not just in gender, but also in the ethnicity of the people. So, it's not like a Bangladeshi mosque or a Pakistani mosque, or which we often, a lot of them UK mosques are, unfortunately. But you can't say that. It's like, it would be kind of impossible, almost silly, to kind of suggest that for CICC. And that makes me proud to be able to work with them, because
There's no
otherwise you
adjective.
have that.
There's no adjective. There's no, how you're saying how people refer to mosques in this country. It's like, oh, this is a Bangladeshi mosque. This is a Pakistani mosque. This is a Somali mosque. There's no adjective there.
That really adds. Yeah, that really adds to CICC. I think, like what Brother Sohail said at the beginning, and I think just because from the beginning when we asked him that, how did he start off, he started speaking about the vision straight away. So I think always keep being visionary, I think, pays off if you think of it like that. So the vision of having the community and having a place where sisters are feel valued, and their all of their value is actually used, and they add value to the thing. I think having all of that, really, we've got one of the sisters, mashallah, who's just joined, Sister Fawzia, alhamdulillah, who's always helping out. But Yeah, I forgot what I was talking about. But what I wanted to come on to was actually the vision for the future for CICC.
Mm,
And obviously, I think this is kind of a beautiful vision already, like a beautiful dream kind of already to have so much diversity. But it also gives that freedom where it's not kind of restricted to a sect or restricted to a culture or a Pakistani culture or Bengali culture. It's actually free
mm.
to follow the Quran and the Sunnah. It's actually free to follow Islam, based on how they believe Islam should be followed,
But
which
in
isn't
that case,
always.
that
Mm,
you so from based on what you're saying, Habib, and obviously this is a question to Dr. Sohail, and this is a very young and fledgling organization, but you said you have so many different people, like of so many different ethnicities and people who are generally different who sit on the board of trustees. I, alhamdulillah, also sit on a mosque board of trustees, and it was very recent since I've been here, just to throw that out. But I see, like, even I don't really, I'm not a very good trustee. I'm just there, for some reason. But I've noticed there are, even in where I am, there are a lot of differences of opinion, a lot of conflict that can happen when
Mm.
people are of different outlooks and views. And as Habib said, people are free. So, there is bound to be more differences of opinion and things running differently. How would you address that?
Yeah, it's something that you're absolutely right. I think that the for some reason, as Muslims, we have this thing that uh, we when we get together in Islam, sometimes we have a lot of different opinion, and it's on the minor stuff, it's on the small stuff. The big stuff we all agree with.
Mm,
We all believe in the science. It's the 5% that we disagree. With when should Eid be? Should it be on, celebrated with Pakistan, or should it be done this way? And should we be reading namaz like this or like this? And I think it's on the small stuff like that. And there's always going to be division. There's always going to be, difference of opinion. But I think one of the things I've learned, and I've learned actually this, it's not something that I'm saying that I'm good at. One of the things I've learned from my colleagues, from my fellow trustees, and from my experience is differences in opinion is a good thing. Yeah. When you have people who, talk about, when if you try to shut, people's opinions off, when you try to, gag them or try to say that you're right, this is something that actually is counterproductive. And sometimes actually discussing it, allowing people to voice their opinion, and then coming to an agreement together is actually a very powerful tool. And I learned this, actually, I have to admit my own mistakes now. Is we were going to buy a property on near the mosque, okay, and there was a lot of there's a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of interest in this. And but at the same time, there were members of the community who were genuinely concerned about it. And I think, what I learned and from my own mistakes is what we didn't do is, or we did do in the end, but what we didn't do initially is we didn't get everybody to air their opinion. And we only came to that at a slightly later stage. And when we did, we decided I was really for buying this property. I was really for it. But in the end, we didn't buy it. And there was it left such a feeling in my heart. But now, years gone by, that was absolutely the right decision that we didn't buy it, because Allah had kept something better for us. And Allah had created this as a test to check how we're going to deal with it. And once we got into that stage where everybody was able to talk about their opinion and their objections and their reservations, it all worked out in the end. And in the end, what you've got to remember is that why you're doing this is you're doing it for Allah. You're not doing it for your own personal ego. You're not doing it for your personal gain. You're doing it for a greater purpose. And I think when you listen to people, when you allow them to express themselves, and when you take into account their differences, it actually works in your favor, rather than saying, right, that's the right way to do it. We're not going to listen to you. And I think that's what I've learned. That actually I used to be very much, as a surgeon, you have to say, right, there's the right way, there's my way, or there's the wrong way. Okay, and that's what you have to do in surgery, because if you're in the middle of an operation, you're not going to say, "Oh, shall I use this clamp or shall I use this?" You don't talk about things like that. You say, "Right, pass me this, otherwise, this is going to happen." But when you're dealing with a community, when you're dealing with, people with different views, different backgrounds, I have a belief that 99.9% of people are good. 99% of people are good. There will be some people who aren't good, who have got some, and they're even good, but they don't know how to express themselves. But 99% of people want to help. And I think if you keep that in your heart and you try to look at that side, and if you genuinely want to think about God and pleasing God, and you're doing activities to please Allah, then it'll be easy for you to do that. But you have to have a whole lot of patience. You have to have a vat of patience to be able to do that. And this is something we all have to work at.
Yeah, that's very true. Wow, Jazakallah khair. We've come to the end of our time. But alhamdulillah, I think we got through everything we wanted to get through. Imad's got one last question, I think, and then we'll try and wrap it up in about a minute, inshallah, and then we'll let everyone go, inshallah. Imad was desperate for this. Go on, Imad.
That was before. I was desperate before. Now, alhamdulillah, you've taken the conversation to a different level. Just final remarks, I think. Jazakallah khair. It's just balancing your career and, helping with the community in such a huge capacity. It's just amazing. My question was about IR. Is it replacing vascular surgery? Radiology.
Okay, so that's a very good question. I think the way you've got to look at it is that, you see, when you in medicine, what happens is that technology advances, okay, and technology advances, the way we treat disease advances, and with that you have got to move as a profession. Now the vascular surgery profession has moved with that profession, and as a result they've embraced IR. Okay, and what's happened is we've learned a lot of the skills of IR, and we've learned to work with IR, because the difference with us with vascular surgery is, it's your patient, you're looking after the patient. Okay, so because it's your patient, you need to be, a very important principle the cardiologists learned very early is, if it's your patient, you should be able to treat the patient. And so a lot of vascular surgeons have learned IR skills and have the open skills, so they've got the best of both worlds. So in answer to your question, no, I would say the other way around. I think IR and vascular surgery, interventional radiology and vascular surgery used to be engaged, now they're married.
Wow,
mashallah.
Jazakallah
khair. There's just Bolani Yishavi was wanted to get in touch with Dr. Sohail. So I was wondering if there's any way to contact you.
Yeah, sure. I'll give you email addresses and things. Of course, not a problem. You can give my number, my email address, whatever.
Okay, so if Bolani can get in touch with me or Imad or Dr. Sohail, and then we'll be able to forward that information, inshallah. But Jazakallah khair, everyone. Jazakallah, Imad, for your beautiful time, and special thanks to, and may Allah reward you, Dr. Sohail, for coming. And alhamdulillah, I feel like I know him a bit better now, so alhamdulillah, and hopefully we'll be able to continue working together as well in Colchester. Maybe we'll invite Imad down to come in.
Inshallah, I want to. I can't wait to meet you and Dr. Ramali, who was the last doctor we had here. Amazing conversation, and likewise, we can go on for hours and hours.
Absolutely, I've enjoyed it a great deal, and as I said at the beginning, I'm honoured and privileged for you to invite me as your guest. It's a humbling thing, and I think that I don't this is not about me blowing my trumpet at all in any way. I think, remember that as a community we're a team, and behind every person there's lots of other people, and I have to mention my trustees, Sister Alex, Brother Nadeem, Brother Farouk, Sister Shumi, Sister Dulan, Brother Shazad, Brother Kazim. These trustees are really hardworking and good people. And what you've also got to remember is that, as a vascular surgeon, you don't just become a vascular surgeon. You have a team of people who, contribute towards your thing. You're just the man at the top. But the most important thing that I can say is that the people behind you are your family. I think your family, they're the ones who really, are the ones who, your parents, your wife, who, bears all the difficulties of you working all the time, and things like that. I think your children. I think that if one thing that I kind of feel that I could have done better is that you should always remember that you're a husband and a family man.
Wow, jazakallah
There
khair.
should always be a priority in your heart, even if you can't deliver it all the time.
Jazakallah khairan.
Never give up family for anything, I guess. Jazakallah, that's a beautiful way to end. And we'll see everyone next week, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi
Thank you very
wa
much indeed.